When I came to Cal, it was 1964, and there was that election of between Goldwater and Lyndon Johnson, and so I came to Berkeley, and I was in journalism in grad school, and it was a much more exciting place than Occidental College, because that was very quiet and proper. So I was, instead of being with 1,000 students, I was with 30,000 students. And I started doing cartoons for the Daily Cal. And so what I would do is, so this is what the Daily Cal looked like. I would do a strip on the editorial page 5 days a week. It's called On Campus, and they put my name there,
So you would do those on the daily?
Yeah, every day. And I could do whatever I wanted. So usually I would do, this is about the civil rights movement in the South. This is about Vietnam War. And this is about the humor magazine on the campus, the Pelican. So I had like a free hand to do cartoons. And, but once in a while, I would go into picket lines, but that was like, I had a couple of girlfriends who were very into it. So they would be in the picket line, and I'd sit and say hi, and they said, "Oh, I need to get a book at the library. Could you hold my spot?" So I would march, with a sign, and they would go and come back. And once actually I sat at a table that somebody else, she had to go do something. And so one of my profs came by and said, "Oh, you're really involved now." I said, "Well, no." So I did try to keep a distance so that I could be impartial. But really you couldn't be impartial. You could tell from how many cartoons I did which side I really was on. The tricky part was that being in journalism school, I knew that you had to appear to be neutral. So you can't take sides even if you're a cartoonist. So I would make, criticize the war and so forth. But once in a while, I'd also criticize the students, make fun of certain things they did. Like they had something called the filthy speech movement.
What was that about?
Well, that was very strange because they won this free speech thing, and so you could say anything you want about politics. So one day, some guy came to the middle of the campus and held up a sign with one word on it, and it was a very nasty word, and he was arrested. It was one word. It starts with F, so you can figure what it is. And so the people wanted to defend him, saying, "Well, that's free speech too. You can say that." But most students say, "No, come on, let's go on. We don't want to sit in for that. We don't want to go to jail for that." So I made fun of that people were asked to go to jail for a dirty word. And so once in a while I'd get criticized by students in my classes saying, "No, don't make fun of us, make fun of the administration." And then, of course, sometimes the administration came to me and said, "Well, I liked your cartoon because, can we use it in our PR thing?" So I would get things from both sides. Yes, but I couldn't really do it at the time when they were being arrested, because I started right after in January of '65. So everything happened in December, November of '64. So by the time I got started doing them, it was just the aftermath. So I did cartoons about the trial, that they had a trial for the free speech people. And of course, the thing faded very fast because then the Vietnam War was heating up. So all of a sudden, the students, once the free speech movement was kind of won, they started focusing on the Vietnam War, so that they didn't go back to the free speech stuff anymore. It was the Vietnam War. So most of my cartoons are about the war and about how people looked at that. So these are all pictures from the 60s. This is the same one, Telegraph Avenue. This is People's Park on the very first day. So this is like typical hippies, you know, music and flutes, you know. And this is somebody actually throwing tear gas back at the police. So I got it in the act. But also in that, you want to make sure if you print something like that, you can't recognize who that is because you could get arrested. So we never published pictures of anybody you could recognize because, this guy we published because this guy put out something called Underground Comics. So he was holding up a Disney comic and a copy of Zap, which was the first issue, you know. And you know, when I would go out there and photograph these, I'd always knew this is taken from behind the soldiers, because it's actually safer to be behind them. And also, I always dress very kind of like a sports jacket, so I wouldn't look like a hippie. So they would just think I'm working for a regular newspaper. So I could take these pictures. This is in People's Park. And this is a guy who used to advocate smoking LSD, Timothy Leary. He used to come to our office a lot. But the thing about these pictures is that if you took them, it'd also be dangerous because the students didn't know who you were. And the police had photographers dressed just regularly. And so sometimes the students would corner you and ask you, let me see, you know, who are you? And if they didn't like what you said, they would smash your camera. Because, you know, you could have them arrested if you were a police. So I always knew somebody, and they knew who I was, so nothing ever happened to me. It actually did affect me a lot because she grew up in Russia, under the Tsar, and so she told me. I was a history major undergrad, so I always asked her about what happened. And my grandfather was there too. He was in the Revolution, and he survived that. So I would ask them questions about their youth back in 1917, 18, which is 100 years ago, you know, almost. And so she had this story. She said, "Don't get involved because you don't know what's going to happen." She had a friend. She went to 1 year of school, so she could read, but that's all she could. But then she taught herself to read, and she was very smart later on, and she was very strong-willed. And she had this neighboring boy that she met while she was watching the flocks, sheep and lambs. He was about the same age, and they had 1905. They had a revolution in Russia that didn't succeed. They burned some of the manors and stuff, but then the Tsar sent in soldiers to arrest people. And apparently this boy next door, his father was some kind of leader, so they came to look for the father. And he, of course, gone hiding. So instead of the father, they got the son, who was like 18, and they took him, put him in the center of everybody, and shot him. You know, as an example. So you wouldn't do that. So she remembered that. See? So she said, "Don't get involved." And I said, "Well, come on, this is America. They don't shoot people in America." Which actually, I mean, I thought it was true, but actually, they do once in a while shoot people. But I said, "No, come on, it's impossible." So that's why I didn't get that involved. with actually any of these groups. She said, don't get involved. And she also said, this Mario Salvia is a very smart guy, but they're going to get him for something, which they actually did. They always find some reason to get rid of you, even if it's not stated. They find like a parking ticket or something. So there's different ways to get rid of people that you don't like. I mean, not completely rid of, but just get them out of the school. So that's what she told me. And then I did these cartoons, but then I took a break for 2 years because I graduated. I was 24, and the draft was on. So that would be very eligible to go from UC Berkeley to Vietnam. And I didn't want to do that. And so it was kind of funny because my parents were actually very conservative, and they were in favor of America's war against the communists. But my father didn't want me to go because I'm his only son. He says, well, I support the war, but I don't want you to go, which is kind of hypocritical, actually. You know. But so I had an alternative. I joined the Peace Corps. So I was 2 years in the Peace Corps in the West Indies, in the Caribbean. So that's so I went from Berkeley to the West Indies, and at that time, just when I left Berkeley, it was all these anti-Vietnam demonstrations were happening. So it was always in the press. So when I went to the training for the Peace Corps, people said, "Oh, you're from Berkeley. What's going on and what's going to happen next?" So I was known as the Berkeley guy. So I was trained in Washington D.C. at a place called Howard University, not Harvard, but Howard.
Okay.
And it's an all-black school. So we were there in '66, just after they had riots in Washington D.C. And so it was kind of dicey.